Good morning, vlog. Another week on cardiac anesthesia. Fit check of the day. Let's go. Hi, puppies. Good morning. Do I take my car to work or my bike to work? I'm just kidding, but for real, one day, I will take that bike to work instead of driving. Today is not that day though. And we are back for another week. Doing a cabbage today, so more hearts. What's also special about today is that it's July 1st, which means it's my first day as a third-year anesthesia resident. Halfway through residency now, just 2 more years to go. Also, you guys absolutely loved story time last week, and so many of you guys signed up for my newsletter, which means a whole lot to me. Make sure to go sign up to join my 100K subscriber giveaway. All right, let's get to the OR. Let's go. One of the first things I do when I get to the OR is just start setting up my medications. For these cardiac cases, there are a lot of medications that we use. The absolute holy grail of all vasopressors, this bad boy. This is epinephrine. Regardless on if I'm doing a cardiac case or not, every single day I always have a bag of dilute epinephrine because you never know what kind of emergency you're going to get into. For example, if your patient has anaphylaxis, epinephrine is one of our go-tos for treating anaphylaxis. But the most dreaded worry that we have is ending up in a situation where we have to call a code blue. Okay, pause the vlog real quick. You hear someone yell code blue over the speakers and suddenly everybody's running. I gotta show you what's actually happening in that room because it's not like the movies. So welcome back to another story time with Sean. So a code blue means that somebody's heart just stopped doing its one job, pumping blood. No blood moving means no oxygen to the brain, and the clock starts the second it happens. So everything I'm about to show you happens very fast. First and foremost, code blues look like chaos, but everyone in that room has a job. One person, usually a physician, runs the code and calls the shots. Someone is on chest compressions with another person waiting to switch in. Someone's managing the airway and breathing for them, such as yours truly, anesthesia. Someone else is pushing medications, and then there's even someone whose whole job is to watch the clock and write down every single detail. It's organized chaos, but heavy on the organized. Now, step 1, the most important part, chest compressions. Hard, fast, and at least 2 inches down, 100 to 120 times a minute. Some of you might have heard that you can go to the beat of Staying Alive. Yes, the Bee Gees, and that's actually true. But at this point, we are being the heart for them, squeezing blood to the brain by hand. Now, doing chest compressions is exhausting, so every couple minutes, someone fresh taps in when we stop to check for a rhythm, because tired compressions are bad compressions. Now, this is the part where the movies get totally wrong, and you've seen it 1,000 times. The line goes flat, the doctor grabs the paddles, yells clear, and boom, the patient's back. Yeah, no. You can't shock a flat line. The shock only helps when the heart isn't stopped, but instead it's quivering like during ventricular fibrillation. During VFib, the muscle fibers are twitching totally out of sync, so there's no real squeeze. But we can shock it, and one big jolt momentarily stops all the chaos at once so the heart's own pacemaker can take back over. But during a true flatline, the paddles do nothing, and we keep on giving compressions, and every few minutes we give medications such as epinephrine. But during this entire process, we're also thinking about why the patient is coding. Maybe it's a blood clot, maybe it's something wrong with the different chemicals in the blood, because if it's a reversible cause, we want to fix it. Now, I want to be real for a second. In that room, it's never just a patient in the bed. That's somebody's mom, somebody's kid, someone who woke up this morning with plans for the weekend. The whole room knows that, and it's exactly why no one's panicking and no one's quitting. We're calm and we're working together and fighting for them like they're our own loved ones. That's the job. And when it works and your 2 fingers can feel a pulse, there's genuinely no better feeling in the world. If you guys take one thing from this, it's to go learn hands-only CPR. It's free, it only takes like an hour, and it's all at cpr.heart.org. Because one day you could be the person keeping someone's heart going until we get there. You don't have to be a doctor or a healthcare professional to save a life. I hope you guys enjoyed this story time with Sean. Now let's get back to the vlog.
All right, guys. Audio test. 1, 2. Welcome to my garage. Something a little new. Got the little mic because I don't think you guys could hear me from back there. But I'm in my garage. I just got home from a long day in the hospital, and finding ways to stay active and recover after these days has always been pretty difficult. So I want to show you guys something new that I've been up to. Check out this bad boy. This right here is my Velotric Tempo. Velotric is actually the sponsor of this video. That's right. Your boy's a biker. So a lot of you guys know that I kind of cut down the running because of the whole shin splints thing. And so I was looking for other ways to stay active. So like a month and a half ago, Velotric sent this to me, and I've been going on evening rides a couple times a week. And that's been a lot of fun. Not only is it a bicycle, but it's also an e-bike. What I like about it is that this thing is super lightweight and feels super natural to ride. Not huge or bulky, and because it's only 39 pounds, it's super easy to move around in store without becoming a whole thing. Because it still rides like a normal bike, I actually feel active while using it. It's pretty much the perfect middle ground for where I can get movement, fresh air, cardio, but also mentally reset after a long day. If I want a better workout, I literally just don't use the electric part and then just go up on the gears so that it's more difficult and feels like a workout. After really long stretches in the hospital, it honestly just feels good to get outside, explore the city and some of the parks, and just do all the things that make you feel human again. It also has some really cool features built into it. For example, this armband. It's a heart rate monitor that links to the pulse mode feature. You literally just strap it on the forearm and it connects to the bike. You essentially pick a heart rate before you start riding, and it adjusts your pedal assist in real time to keep you in that zone. So like say I'm going uphill and my heart rate goes too high and out of the zone, then it'll give me a little bit of assistance to bring the heart rate down. It takes a minute or two to settle in at the start, and then it just fades into the background. You kind of forget it's doing anything. The bike also has built-in Apple Find My support, NFC unlocking, and it's waterproof rated. Really awesome features that I didn't know a bike could have. If you live in California and in areas where driving your car and parking is a hassle, electric bike might be a good option for you. Also, let me know what your guys' favorite things are to do outside, especially after a long day at work. So yeah, as someone who spends a lot of time in the hospital and needs more excuses to get outside, the Velotric Tempo has been absolutely incredible. If you guys want to check them out, I'll have links in the description box. Make sure to check them out, and thank you so much again to Velotric Tempo for sponsoring this week's vlog.
All right, guys. So I just got back from another day in the cardiac OR. I figured I would chat with you guys a little bit before I head inside because I don't really like wearing my dirty scrubs into the house. And so we're gonna chat here in my garage, which is kind of perfect because we've already spent some time in my garage this vlog. I'm actually about to take my bike out for a little ride after I change because the weather right now in San Diego is just beautiful. But this vlog, we've been talking a bit about code blues or cardiac arrest. And now that you guys know a little bit more about what that entails, I wanted to talk a bit more about my experiences with code blues in my training so far. After going through several years of undergrad, getting clinical experience as a scribe, and then medical school, and now going into my third year of residency, I have seen and been a part of many code blues. In fact, I remember my first code blue as a pre-med when I was a scribe, as well as my first code blue when I was a medical student, and my first code blue when I was a resident. Now, when I was a medical scribe, of course, that was my first code blue ever. And that memory is very vivid. I remember feeling like I had no idea what was going on. You had all these doctors, nurses, RTs, pharmacists, techs, bunch of people in the room. And then there was me. As a scribe, I wasn't allowed to touch the patient. I definitely wasn't allowed to do things like give medications. I remember how chaotic but concerted it felt, although to me, it felt more chaotic than it probably actually was. I remember seeing that patient's family, and I remember hearing the healthcare team debrief after the code. Moving on to medical school, I remember seeing my first code as a third year medical student. There were still a lot of things going over my head because I was still new to the clinical setting. As a medical student, you are now allowed to be hands-on since you are under the supervision of a resident or attending physician. So I remember doing my first chest compressions on a patient in the hospital as a medical student, and that felt very intense to me. I remember just going for 2 minutes, and even though 2 minutes in the real world feel short, I remember those felt like the longest 2 minutes of my life. I was sweating my butt off. But at that point, I had a better understanding of the things that were happening during the code, but still things were going over my head. We had someone leading the code leader, that was yelling out, instructions, asking for things. We had a timer that was yelling out certain time checkpoints, 2 minutes, check a rhythm, when was the last time epinephrine was administered. And even though I understood things a little bit more, at that point, my main priority, my main job was to deliver high quality chest compressions. And I did, and I still remember that. I remember feeling ribs crack. You might be wondering, why are you feeling ribs crack? Well, the heart's underneath all of this tissue and, your chest wall, your sternum, your rib cage, right? It's all protecting your heart, because on a day-to-day basis, you really don't want things, hitting you in the chest and affecting your heart. So if you're delivering chest compressions, a lot of the time you gotta push through all that, and sometimes that can result in, breaking some of the bones in this area. So I remember that was my focus, but a lot of the management of the code was still going over my head. Fast forward to being a resident physician. As you guys know, I did a medicine intern year, which consisted of 4 months of medicine and 2 months of ICU. So you can imagine during that time, I saw a lot of codes. And I remember my first code as a resident because that was my first code as a doctor. So that was the first time that I was in a position where I actually needed to help run the code, which means making sure that all parts of the code are covered. Someone's doing chest compressions, someone's timing, someone is at the airway. I'm keeping track of what medications we've given, what medications we need to give. Also going through the algorithm in my head of what's going on with this patient, why are they coding, what could be a reversible cause that we can fix right now, possibly getting intake from the covering team, the nurse taking care of the patient, whatever it is. So you can see, from being a medical scribe to a medical student to now a resident physician, I've seen a lot of codes, I've been in a lot of codes, but my role in those codes has evolved as my clinical training has evolved. If you guys have been watching my vlogs, then you know that when we are on call, anesthesia needs to show up to every single code. And so again, I've seen a lot of them, and I try not to talk about them when they happen on this channel, because obviously I want to respect people's privacy. And even if I am not describing anything that could be considered HIPAA, I still feel like describing the clinical scenario when it comes to code blues sometimes, I don't know. I just don't necessarily feel great about it. And so I try to avoid it, even though for sure there have been vlogs I've posted where sometime during that vlog there was a code, but you guys never heard about it. Now, something I mentioned in the animation this week is the importance of learning hands-only life support. It doesn't matter if you're in healthcare or not, knowing how to initiate CPR is probably one of the most vital skills you can have, because you never know if you're gonna be in that position one day. If you are in that position, then you could possibly save a life just by taking the hour it takes to go get trained. Another thing I want to reinforce is that we do not take codes lightly as healthcare workers. Whether they are a patient that we've been taking care of or we are first meeting them during that code, we care about those patients as if they were our loved ones, our family members, and so we do our best to take care of them, and we remember them through the rest of our training and our careers. Anyway, speaking of cardiac stuff, I am gonna go get dressed and go on a little bike ride, get some exercise. As you guys know, zone 2 training is very good for your cardiovascular system, and this bike is actually really good for that because of the whole heart rate monitoring thing. So I definitely recommend you guys go check out Velotric. Shout out again to them for sponsoring this video. That's it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.